Hola, muy buenos días. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas al octavo Congreso de Bibliotecas Universitarias y Especializadas, organizado por la Dirección de Servicios de Información y Bibliotecas SISIB de la Universidad de Chile. Soy Rafael Castillo, parte del equipo organizador. Agradecemos su asistencia a esta segunda versión online de nuestro encuentro. Si bien extrañamos reunirnos presencialmente, continuamos con esta modalidad para la seguridad de todos y todas. Les invitamos a utilizar el chat y las redes sociales como un espacio para interactuar con sus colegas y pares. Tal como ayer, 𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗀, parte de nuestro equipo organizador, estará saludando, respondiendo sus consultas y entregándonos la información relevante. También podemos conversar por Twitter usando el hashtag 𝗔𝗹𝗲𝗅𝗶2022. Les invitamos a seguir nuestra cuenta de Twitter, 𝗔𝗹𝗲𝗅𝗶. Mientras esperamos que se conecten los y las asistentes, queremos saber a qué se dedican, cuál es su actividad puntualmente en las ciencias de la información. Para eso vamos a levantar una encuesta aprovechando la tecnología de Zoom y realizaremos, esto aparecerá en su pantalla. Tienen aproximadamente 2 minutos para contestar. Mientras tanto, desde el equipo organizador del Congreso queremos agradecer a nuestros auspiciadores, IMTS Groups, 𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗀, Wiley, Emerald, Publishing, 𝗔𝗹𝗲𝗅𝗶, BMJ, ProQuest, Turnitin, Cambridge University Press, 𝗔𝗹𝗲𝗅𝗶, IOP Publishing, 𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗄, Oxford University Press, el libro, TIEM, Springer Nature, 𝗪𝗏𝗂𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗀. Asimismo, también agradecer a nuestros patrocinadores, Wikimedia Chile, 𝗪𝗂𝗏, el Colegio de Bibliotecarios, 𝗂𝗂𝗃, la Escuela de Bibliotecología de la UTEM, la carrera de Bibliotecología de la Universidad de Playa Ancha y la carrera de Gestión de Información Bibliotecología Archivística de la Universidad Alberto Hurtado. Mientras contestan, aprovecho también de leer algunos saludos. Por ejemplo, queremos agradecer, nos saludan desde México, imagínense, de Guadalajara, desde la Universidad Internacional SEC, también desde Brasil, desde España, desde Tucumán, Argentina, muchas gracias, desde Bogotá, Colombia también, Guayaquil, desde la Universidad de Guayaquil, desde El Salvador. Muchas gracias, saludos a toda Latinoamérica, la verdad, agradecemos su asistencia. Ok. Les quiero aprovechar de contar también que estamos transmitiendo en vivo a través de nuestro canal de YouTube, SISIB Chile. Ahí quedarán alojadas las conferencias de hoy y las de las siguientes jornadas, para que puedan consultarlas cuando gusten. Asimismo, les sugiero suscribirse a nuestro canal. En este se encuentran las conferencias de nuestra pasada edición y otros múltiples recursos. Mi compañero 𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗀 está dejando el link en el chat. También queremos aprovechar de recordarles que durante la tarde de estas 3 jornadas hay una parrilla muy interesante de más de 20 talleres que les invitamos a revisar en el sitio web del Congreso. El link está disponible en el chat. Les recordamos que los talleres son gratuitos y requieren registro individual en cada uno de ellos. Aún pueden registrarse para la jornada de la tarde y para mañana. Y por último, y no menos importante, tenemos disponible una feria virtual de productos y servicios de información. Pueden encontrarla en el menú del sitio web del Congreso bajo Feria Virtual. Ahí podrán conocer a los proveedores y productos y agendar reuniones. Roberto está también dejando el link en el chat. Sí, quiero aprovechar también este momento para recordarles primero que cada conferencia tendrá un espacio para preguntas al final. Les invitamos a formularlas en el chat y también vía Twitter usando el hashtag @𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗪2022. La transmisión en vivo a través de YouTube no tiene disponible la opción de realizar preguntas. Segundo, En caso que necesiten utilizar el servicio de traducción inglés-español para nuestras conferencias, pueden encontrar un icono de mundo en la parte inferior, hacia la derecha, en su sesión de Zoom. Apretando ahí podrán conectarse al canal para utilizar el servicio. Deben presionar la opción español para oír la traducción. Una vez que esta finalice, deben volver al canal original. Ahora damos comienzo. Antes de eso, perdón, voy a leer la actividad principal en general de los asistentes actualmente al Congreso. Es de un 93% de los asistentes hoy trabaja en biblioteca. Tenemos solo un 2% que trabaja en archivos, tenemos un 2% en trabajos de investigación y un 3% que trabaja en docencia. Está aumentando cada vez más nuestra cantidad de participantes, ya nos acercamos rápidamente a los 300, lo agradecemos. Y bueno, ahora damos comienzo oficial a la segunda jornada de la 8ª edición del Congreso de Bibliotecas Universitarias y Especializadas con la conferencia de 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗪𝗿𝗱. 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗪𝗿𝗱 es directora asociada de investigación y aprendizaje en la biblioteca del Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Estados Unidos. Recientemente fue nombrada como integrante del equipo editorial del MIT y es miembro electo de la junta directiva de 3 organizaciones: The Center for Research Libraries Literacies, The Conversation US Edition. También ha sido elegida como miembro del consejo asesor del 𝗔𝗹𝗲𝘅𝗶 Society of Fellows in Critical Bibliography. Ha publicado múltiples capítulos de libros y artículos de investigación en una amplia gama de temas relacionados con la diversidad. Hoy 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗪𝗿𝗱 nos presenta la conferencia Meeting the Mission Moment, Exercising Bold Leadership During COVID and Beyond. Les recordamos que pueden hacer sus preguntas a través del chat y el Twitter utilizando el hashtag #BiblioU2022. Estas serán formuladas luego de la conferencia. ¿Ok? 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗪𝗿𝗱, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros y nosotras desde Boston, Estados Unidos. La palabra es tuya.
Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. I am 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗪𝗿𝗱, everyone, the Associate Director of Research and Learning for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, known as MIT Libraries. I extend you greetings on behalf of our director, Chris Berg, and also all of my colleagues, 165 employees of the MIT Libraries. I will share with you that it is quite chilly here, and so you may be surprised to see me in a turtleneck. Yesterday, we were -12°C. Today, we are back up to a warm 8°C. So I do hope and imagine that wherever you are in the world, it is warmer and far more balmy than it is here. It is my privilege and honor to speak with you today on a topic that really touches my heart and that I hope will resonate with all of the conference attendees. And so I will share my screen. Just give me one moment, everyone. And what I will be talking to you about today is meeting the mission moment, as I describe it, exercising bold leadership during COVID and beyond. And so I want to first say to you all that the conference presenters, of whom I am deeply appreciative of, gave me a significant charge and request for this presentation. They asked me to share my experience of what the MIT Libraries has been doing in the era of COVID-19 and the future that we think is coming for libraries. They also requested that I discuss with you our service model, our community, and our restart efforts for campus services. And the conference conveners also requested that I discuss the future of work and artificial intelligence. And so I swear to you that I will do my best. These are significant pieces of a broader puzzle through which we all share some commonalities. I also want to extend my appreciation and thanks to all of the conference sponsors and to all of those who work so hard behind the scenes to make my engagement with you as seamless as possible. I will ask you for a little space and grace if there are some technological challenges, as we will strive to remediate those as soon as we can. So everyone, I will first start with discussing what has taken place with the MIT libraries during the era of COVID. Everyone, I would frame this within broad strokes, if you will. In the United States, we talk about things in being broad brushstrokes. And I would identify our thinking, our practices, our processes, and our procedures through these 4 areas as identified on this slide: strategically minded, purposefully productive, intentionally deliberative, and continuously recalibrating. And I would like for conference attendees to consistently think about these 4 phrases as I walk you through some of the work that has taken place in partnership with my amazing colleagues. So everyone, I believe internationally, we are in a critical mission moment for all libraries and for ourselves as we continue to negotiate the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Many of us have gone through a cycle of reflection and introspection while also working and stretching ourselves in ways that are not common. As we think about the ways in which we are going to continue to advance our work through the continuing COVID era, but also position ourselves for the most perfect possible future post-COVID, we should continuously reorient ourselves around why we are doing what we're doing in service to our communities and to our patrons. And moreover, what are the skills and what is necessary for us as libraries and library employees and leaders to ensure that we are constantly coming back to reorienting ourselves around the mission moment. And so in the context of meeting the mission moment within the MIT libraries, I'll speak to you today about these 6 areas. First, everyone, believe it or not, during COVID, we renovated our main library. We're very proud of what it looks like, and I am particularly excited to share with you that we will be featured in a United States magazine that is quite prestigious, Architectural Digest, in the upcoming months. So look out for that information really soon. We also implemented a full program that we described as Restart. And so you all's query to me around sharing information about how we restarted our program is absolutely apropos, because we literally renamed our reorientation efforts back onto campus after the onset of the pandemic crisis as Restart. We also did, everyone, a significant amount of capacity building within our library's community engagement program to enhance what we refer to as a sense of belonging on our campus. We also assert our position as the MIT libraries and the role of libraries with educating patrons about AI ethics. We have also been focused on strengthening the library's diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts. And lastly, we have spent a significant amount of time aligning the library's strategic priorities with our new urgency vision. So everyone, I will begin with the Hayden Main Library renovation. And as you heard in the introduction, I started at MIT Libraries on October 1st of 2020. This renovation project was well underway at the point that I began, yet I was placed on the Restart and the Hayden renovation teams to ensure that the last elements of these important efforts moved about as seamlessly as possible. We are really very proud of how we have invited a whole new way of engaging in library spaces as a result of this renovation. As you can see from these pictures, we have opened up the space more. We have removed some of the stacks and pushed them further back onto the first floor, but we have allowed the space to be more of a space of collaboration and engaging and belonging. It has been delightful to see our students come into the space with wide eyes of awe, and moreover, utilizing the space in a multitude of ways. So not just simply using the space for receiving and getting information from our library staff, but they also use it as a space of convening. You'll see that one of these other pictures here is the picture of our courtyard cafe. So we actually also have a dining facility within the Hayden Main Library. Here, everyone, is the configurable space within the Hayden Main Library called the Nexus. So on the first floor, the entire space is open. There are no walls. They're just simply kind of curtains to pull around for privacy for groups or individuals. We do have a series of small group study offices also on the first floor, but there are not a lot of kind of constricting walls within the space. What's particularly exciting about the Nexus is that it is a configurable space. So the wall is actually up in the ceiling and retracts down to make the Nexus a more cozy or comfortable meeting space. We have hosted a series of events in the space, including a piano concert by 3 of our graduate students. And we've also hosted the academic council of the Institute, and that includes the president and the provost of the Institute and the senior leadership team. And we have also hosted the office of the vice chancellor of the Institute, who has responsibility for student affairs and student services. Next to the picture of the Nexus, everyone, is our exterior courtyard. We wanted to make sure that we created an inviting space that is also environmentally aligned. You will see that we incorporated a significant amount of natural features within the space, and the courtyard too is utilized quite heavily within the libraries and outside the libraries. Now, everyone, I'm going to talk a bit about our Restart program. So the MIT libraries closed to patrons, everyone, in March of 2020, and we reopened in August of 2021. What that meant is that nearly our entire staff worked remotely during this time period. So the Restart team was constituted to initiate existing services, but also expanding services such as international shipping, because we also had suspended on-campus classes for some time period, and we literally had students and faculty working from various points around the world. We also modified several of our e-resources agreements to extend and increase access. And we also produced a model of deploying research consultations, both virtually and face-to-face for the first time in the way in which we were deploying them. So in other words, we always did virtual services. We always provided a tremendous amount of virtual service. However, we had never done virtual service in the flip model that we did, where everyone was working remotely and having to negotiate technological differences, having to reorient ourselves and also support students and faculty with technology, and then also deploying knowledge.
Alexia, Barbara here. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but could you activate the presentation mode for your slides?
Oh, sure. I am so sorry. My apologies.
No worries. No worries. It's okay.
Is that better?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And my apologies for that. I'm sorry. I thought I did that. And so in the context of continuing to implement the Restart program, everyone, there was a parallel and intersecting process that was initiated by my leadership team at the MIT libraries. And so I am the associate director in charge of the Research and Learning Directorate. And we decided that it was important, because the majority of our team was working remotely, that we address some of the human-centered aspects of Restart, such as change management efforts, addressing health and wellness concerns among the staff, and also committing to engaging our staff in ongoing organizational improvement dialogues. So what we came up with, everyone, is a report that you will have access to, entitled "The Future of Work in the Research and Learning Directorate." And this report marks the first collaborative effort of the Research and Learning Directorate staff at all levels to place their personal imprint on how we think about and plan for the Directorate's future. The research is also incorporated within this report to identify best practices for hybrid work. As we were preparing this report, the university's leadership made it pretty clear through their own process entitled "Work Succeeding" that we would more than likely move towards a hybrid working model for nearly all eligible staff within the MIT community. Therefore, this report addresses some of the activities that are necessary to harmonize staff relations and to also address communications in relationship to a hybrid working model. And so there were a multitude of recommendations that came through. In the United States, we refer to some of these working agreements as shared norms or normals in support of quality work and to avoid workplace conflicts as much as possible. Next, everyone, I'll speak a little bit about capacity building within our community engagement program. And so creating and expanding our community engagement program as a means of staying connected was paramount during COVID for our students, faculty, and university staff. Belonging, which is really a sense of feeling connected to the university and the university's community, is a strategic imperative as identified by the university's senior leadership. The successful MIT Reads program, which is under the purview of the libraries and is also under the purview of my directorate, the Research and Learning Directorate, was conducted virtually on Zoom and in person to include more participants last academic year. Our program had more than 500 attendees for 2 events featuring authors, and we had more than 75 graduate students and 15 university staff attend virtual book clubs that were facilitated by myself and also the library's director of development. So for the MIT Reads program, we featured the book, The Privileged Poor by Anthony Abraham Jack. We refer to him as Tony Jack, where he speaks about how elite colleges are failing disadvantaged students and students who oftentimes are first-generation students. Our spring book was Sexual Citizens, which was a landmark study about sex, power, and sexual assault on campuses in the United States by Jennifer Hirsch and Shaman Kane. And then for the graduate student reading groups, we had a lot of conversation about the book, So You Want to Talk About Race. And so all of these events were very, very successful. Everyone, as you are well aware, the United States just passed a grim landmark in our history, often referred to as the anniversary of the insurrection at the United States Capitol that took place on January 6, 2021. As a result of the circumstances of the insurrection, the MIT Library's leadership felt that it was important to assert a position in relationship to artificial intelligence and its nefarious uses, and also our role in educating patrons about artificial intelligence ethics. So we identified the nefarious use of AI as an opportunity for us to expand our current digital literacy focus. We at the MIT Libraries assert the importance of addressing technologically enabled disinformation campaigns and bias, which we now know was pivotal in the efforts and activities that led to the insurrection at the United States Capitol last year. The MIT Library senior leadership issued a statement, which you will have access to, regarding disinformation of March of last year. And the senior leadership of the libraries commits to ongoing continuous study in educating and preparing our staff for artificial intelligence and the ways in which it will impact library services. We also spend a significant amount of time, everyone, in strengthening our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts. The MIT Libraries has a task force named the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Justice Task Force, which is in the process of completing our first-time libraries diversity report, which will assess to-date activities and will also provide recommendations to our director on key future-focused actions. We conducted a diversity audit, and the preliminary results of that audit identified the need for more organized methodologies, such as managerial training on diversity nomenclature, and also addressing regressive behaviors among our staff that inhibit and in many ways discourage our ability to be able to retain and to recruit a diverse workforce. The task force made a recommendation to the library's senior leadership last year that we create a director level position of organizational effectiveness and diversity to provide leadership, not just to our diversity initiatives and activities, but also to be charged with helping us to continuously increase compositional diversity among the staff. We are excited that this position is currently under review by our provost and his team, and fingers and toes crossed that it will be approved soon and you will hear more about it. And we are also very focused, everyone, on aligning what the senior leadership of the libraries has identified as strategic priorities within our new urgency vision. This vision really started back in 2016 as the result of a university-wide Future of Libraries task force, which was charged to assist the libraries to, quote, evolve to best advance the creation, dissemination, and preservation of knowledge, and for the libraries to serve as a leader in the reinvention of research libraries. The task force's report, of which you will have access to in addition to the new urgency vision information, was really a catalyst for the MIT Libraries to really think about enduring, abundant, equitable, and meaningful access to information that serves to inspire humanity while also making sure that we are providing information that is necessary for our students and faculty to be successful. From the report, our new urgency vision was developed to maximize inclusive access to our collections, our services, and our technologies. Among some of the core elements, everyone, within the new urgency vision are as follows. We at the MIT Libraries view ourselves as a digital-first library. What that means, everyone, is that we are more focused on providing equitable digital access to our community versus continuously acquiring all forms of print material through which, information would be shared. We are also very focused on the prioritization of an open scholarship agenda and are in partnership with scholars and entities internationally to provide as much open access to scholarship as possible. We are also committed to investing in our staff, in our tools, and our services to support data-intensive and computational research and learning, the foundational underpinning of much of the work that takes place at MIT. There is also an emphasis on what we describe, everyone, as the essential core of our physical collections, services, and spaces that will provide a portfolio of singular relevance and exceptional quality of material that cannot be meaningfully replicated in a digital or online context. So in other words, digital first does not necessarily mean digital only. We are committed to object-based pedagogy. We are also committed to providing and sharing information that cannot be replicated in a digital format. The combination of the two will constitute what we describe as the essential core. We are also committed to creating a library's environment that will advance and support and sustain equity, diversity, inclusivity, accessibility, and social justice initiatives. And lastly, we are committed to exercising what we describe as bold leadership in defining new models that other research libraries could potentially replicate in the near future. And so everyone, I was asked to provide you some optimism in the context of COVID. And I do hope that this presentation helps to seed some of that thinking and some of those concepts for you. And so my hope and inspiration for you and your libraries is as follows. I believe, everyone, that we can absolutely leverage the COVID pandemic crisis to examine and re-examine all approaches to services, collections, technology, staffing models, and physical spaces. I also believe, everyone, that it is essential for us to think about and plan for trimming what we describe in the United States as the proverbial fat from our service portfolios so as to avoid burnout by our leadership and our staff. It's important for all of us to be thinking about how we will refine our workflows and our activities to an essential core at this particular moment in history. It's also vital, everyone, that we reshape our libraries to meet this mission moment. And what that means is employing different forms of staff engagement by encouraging more of their participation in service design efforts than perhaps what we have done in the past. This is now the time, everyone, for bold leadership. Without a question, COVID continues to stretch us in ways that are unanticipated and unexpected. As I am talking to you today and thinking about all of these different variants and how they have inhibited our ability to be able to be together face-to-face for this conference, and in many ways face-to-face in our various library spaces, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be thinking about how we can continuously assert the value of libraries and the value that we bring to our respective institutions and organizations. I believe, everyone, that bold leadership falls within these four areas that I started the presentation off with today: being strategically minded, being purposefully productive, being intentionally deliberative, and continuously recalibrating all of what we do for COVID and beyond. I want to thank you all so much again for your time and attention, and I welcome questions and comments from the audience. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Alexia, por la excelente conferencia presentada. Haciendo una especie de resumen y recogiendo algunos conceptos que nos acaban de plantear, se me viene a la mente algo así como el futuro ya está aquí, definitivamente, empujado de alguna forma por la pandemia. Por un lado, es necesario generar diálogos con el equipo de biblioteca, evaluar también cuáles son las mejores prácticas para trabajar en modo híbrido, así como también educarnos con respecto al uso de la inteligencia artificial, alfabetizarnos con respecto a esto. Por otro lado, también es importante buscar cómo mejorar la accesibilidad, la inclusión, la justicia social y la diversidad. Esto también es importante de alguna forma llevarlo adelante por un liderazgo participativo. Debemos pensar también en cómo redefinir la misión de la biblioteca y de alguna forma cómo motivamos al personal en esta participación. En el fondo, Alexia nos ha dejado, creo que, varias certezas, pero también varias preguntas, que en el fondo debemos también buscar cómo vamos respondiendo. Ahora tenemos un periodo de 10 minutos en los que formularé algunas preguntas que la audiencia ha realizado a través del chat o a través del Twitter utilizando el hashtag #BiblioU2022. En primer lugar, 𝗔𝗂𝗱𝗀𝗀 Pizarro consulta: ¿aplicaron encuesta de satisfacción a los usuarios respecto del teletrabajo y sobre el retorno a la normalidad? ¿Cuáles fueron esos resultados?
So it wasn't actually a poll, everyone. It was really more of a conversation and a series of focus groups. And there were several concerns that were raised by team members coming back. So everything from personal safety, the extent to which there would be a university mask mandate or not, right? Whether or not there would be ongoing testing protocols to ensure safety. So those were some of the questions that came up in the focus group. We had already had information, we meaning the library senior leadership team, had already had information that the university was going to be moving forward with mandatory weekly testing for all faculty and staff. The university was also moving forward with testing 2 times a week for all residential students, graduates and undergraduate students, and that the university would also be having a mask mandate. So that was some of the concern, was just around personal safety. Some of the other concerns, everyone, was around kind of physical or social distancing within the workspace. So you'll recall from my presentation that we were working remote from March of 2020 through August of 2021. And so we were bringing the team back into spaces that were traditionally close quarters. So one of the things that we worked with them on was a service design where there were several individuals that, due to the renovation, had closed door offices that were their personal offices. So that wasn't a big concern for that group. But for those that were working in open offices, what we describe as cubicles or shared spaces, that was a concern. So we made sure that we structured our service model where there was appropriate social distancing as well. So those were 2 of the concerns that came up in relation to the working space.
Perfecto, muy agradecido. Una consulta que
You're
nos
welcome.
llega a través de Twitter es: la pandemia toma a todos por sorpresa. El trabajo a distancia sacó a la luz las fallas de la formación del equipo bibliotecario y, en consecuencia, la importancia de un programa de formación continua. Pero ahora, con una mirada más centrada en nuestras verdaderas necesidades, especialmente en lo que se refiere al uso de tecnologías, ¿la biblioteca del MIT ya contaba con un programa de formación continua para el equipo antes de la pandemia? Alexia, muchas gracias por tu conferencia. Es lo que nos dicen por Twitter.
Yes, you are so welcome. So we had what a lot of libraries would refer to as virtual reference and virtual chat services. And that was pretty robust, everyone. So that structure was already in place. What we didn't have in place that we had to create very quickly, probably very similar to many of you all's experiences, was an extended consultation program, if you will. And so the course-related instruction had to shift based on what was happening with the faculty members that the librarian and the librarian staff was partnering with. And that changed because of COVID very quickly. So in other words, we would at one time believe that we could do a hybrid educational model, have some students in the class, bring some others in through Zoom, but then a COVID variant would completely shift that, and we would have to flip 100% to a virtual model. We also had to learn the technology and learn new ways, very similar to you, of how to deploy all types of educational materials within a virtual space, so as to try to make that virtual space engagement as seamless as possible. It was a little bumpy initially. And so I would say that, in spite of the fact that we have technology in our name, that there was still a lot of growth opportunities for us and for the staff. So we did have a foundational program that was somewhat virtual, but then we moved the entire program almost 100% virtual, and that took a lot of shifting.
Perfecto. Continúo con otra pregunta. Ana María Talavera consulta, ¿cómo trabajaron con la comunidad universitaria que tenía poco acceso o problemas de conectividad a los servicios que ustedes ofrecen?
Yeah, this was one of the tough circumstances that happened to everyone in COVID. And this happened not just with our faculty and students and university staff. This also happened with our staff. Because we had to move into remote working so quickly, some inequities in terms of working spaces and technology arose very quickly. Everyone didn't necessarily have high-speed internet connectivity. In fact, 1 out of every 4 households in the United States lacks high-speed internet broadband connection. Many people had aged laptop computers because they were accustomed to coming to the libraries and using, borrowing our technology. Many people are just more accustomed to a learning in which they engage with a human-to-human connection, and coming into the technology, they felt fatigued. It was a psychological barrier, etc. And we saw that happen not just with our patrons, but also with our staff. And so we spent a lot of intentional time in training, in dialogue, and what we describe as in-reach, meaning that I did a bunch of small group conversations with individuals just to assess what was happening with them, how their workspaces were working or not. Also worked with a lot of faculty and staff on helping to provide some recommendations on making their working spaces at home or wherever they were remotely as comfortable as possible. Those things became psychological barriers to our ability to be able to deploy our service. So we employed this concept of space and grace. We exercised a lot of patience with individuals and ourselves, and we continuously shifted. We did our best, and so did the university, in terms of getting people the technology and the support that they needed. We also provided to our staff, and we feel so privileged that we were able to do this. We were able to provide our staff a small, financial stipend to help underwrite the cost of some things to make their working environments a little more easy. So like chairs or desks or lights or webcams. And those efforts really paid off in dividends. And so I hope that I'm answering your question sufficiently, is that it wasn't just simply, the entry or to information access barrier. It was also some technology barriers and some inequities that we found ourselves having to address really quickly.
Sí, sobre el mismo tema que estás planteando, Alexia, ¿qué recomendación le harías a las bibliotecas para equilibrar de alguna forma estas diferencias?
It's really a tough circumstance, everyone. And so I want you all to feel a sense of, comfort or understanding that this is going to be an ongoing challenge. So what I would suggest is, as we're kind of going back and forth between hybrid work and place-based work, is to continuously check in with staff to see if there are ways that we as library leaders or as peers or colleagues can provide support to each other. if you have it within your budget to provide some form of the current technology for individuals to be successful, please do so. If you don't have it in your budget, I would urge you, as someone said earlier in our session, the future is here. I would urge you strongly to think about maybe redeploying some dollars from your print collection budget and putting that into a hybrid working budget. I would also encourage you to, if you can and have access to them, to use subject matter experts and consultants to help you to balance the ideas and the concepts and the conflicts that can arise from hybrid working. And to just also just continuously remind staff and ourselves that we're doing the best as we can under extraordinary circumstances, but these times require a high flexible modality. And as a result, we have to just be mindful of the fact that some of the ways in which we did library work in the past is not coming back. And so that's going to be, I think, a really difficult yet important conversation for us to have, is that it may not always be 100% face-to-face. It may not always be focused on print material, and that we need to think about how we can continuously reshape our service model, but also not shape the service model in a way that it leaves a significant portion of our talented staff behind.
Claro. Por otro lado, nos gustaría saber qué importancia le otorgas a las redes de cooperación bibliotecaria en este nuevo escenario post-pandemia.
Yes, thank you for all of these wonderful questions and this question as well. I really see the value of a consortium effort, both in our respective countries and then also internationally, to problem solve and to continuously scale for some of the challenges that we have discussed today, or that I brought in front of you within my presentation. As we talk about the future of work, as we talk about how there will be impacts with artificial intelligence and how the work of libraries will be reshaped, as we have conversations around equitable staffing models and what that looks like for the current and post-pandemic environment, as we think about our role in educating our patrons about open scholarship and the importance of open access, as we also think about our role in making sure that we are also in the forefront of education, planning, and strategy around ethics in relationship to digital literacy and artificial intelligence. The power of international consortia, I feel, is going to be vital. I am a huge proponent of it, and I definitely am a participant in several of them, and I would encourage more of that to happen.
Perfecto. Alexia, ustedes usan las metodologías de liderazgo ágil. ¿Qué enfoques de liderazgo están empleando y qué experiencias ventajosas o dificultades han detectado?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Because just a little part of it faded out. My apologies.
Ningún problema. Perfecto. Alexia, ustedes usan las metodologías de liderazgo ágil. ¿Qué enfoques de liderazgo están empleando y qué experiencias ventajosas o dificultades han detectado?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There are a lot of challenges and opportunities with a multitude of leadership models, with whichever one we decide to employ upon. I think it requires a lot of internal assessment and determination around the extent to which our staff is ready to receive it, if you will, and that we as colleagues are ready to kind of take different calibrations into consideration. And so I would say that the biggest challenge that we face continuously is the ways in which we as individuals communicate and what types of communication modalities we privilege. So in other words, there are some people who thrive in a virtual environment, and that is their mode that they want to work in 100%. that becomes a little challenging when there's this other population of individuals that thrive in a face-to-face or in-person environment, right? And so harmonizing those two different types of approaches to working and those two different types of approaches of learning and being within a work environment is something that I have a lot of passion around. I don't necessarily have a lot of answers today to share with you all, but I think of the leadership mode that we should be considering for these times is highly participatory and team-centered. And I think that in many ways, our libraries, I don't want to use the word siloed, but a lot of times we've used that to describe our library experiences, is that different departments could kind of work separately and not in harmony with each other. And teams could work separately and would be able to advance their workflows that way. But this era and the future beyond COVID is calling us to more team-centered engagement and more team leadership. And that is what I would encourage, our conference participants to strongly think about.
Gracias, muy interesante lo que nos planteas. Te quería decir, la verdad es que tenemos muchas preguntas y comentarios. Tu presentación ha despertado un gran interés en nuestra audiencia. Nos pone muy alegres también la cantidad de comentarios e intereses de las experiencias del MIT. Tenemos diversas preguntas sobre teletrabajo. Como última pregunta, en honor al tiempo, ¿nos podrías dar una mirada general sobre cómo el teletrabajo seguirá en las bibliotecas del MIT y cómo ves el futuro del teletrabajo en las bibliotecas?
Yes, and thank you again, Raphael, and thank you everyone for all of your really wonderful questions. So the MIT University has made it very clear that under the institution's task force entitled Work Succeeding, that we will as a university continue with hybrid working until further notice. Because we are a science and technology university, we can't 100% decamp or veer away from the fact that our educational experience is very laboratory centered, right? It is very what we describe as haptic. It is based on touch and based on engagement with each other, right? However, COVID has taught us that there are ways to extend that laboratory educational experience into a virtual realm, but that the virtual realm can't 100% substitute for the in-person realm. So for the libraries, everyone, we will continue with a hybrid working model, until, I think it's going to be here permanently, quite frankly. We do have a directorate within the libraries, our technology directorate, that is nearly 100% remote. They were able to identify that they could do their work successfully from various remote locations. And that directorate has also been able to advance some really important work with other technology units on the university's campus that are also remote. But for those of us that have responsibility for teaching, learning, research, and patron engagement, we will continue to do what we describe as the hybrid working model. We're learning and growing on the ways in which there are successes and opportunities and difficulties within the hybrid working model. But so far, we have had a lot of really wonderful staff engagement, a lot of commendations from our institution's community on how well things are working. And so I believe that this model of working is here to stay. Raphael, you are muted. There you go.
I saw. Alexia, agradecemos nuevamente tu conferencia y el tiempo que tomaste para responder las preguntas de nuestra audiencia. Muchas gracias, Alexia.
Thank you, everyone.